On the day my daughter tried to hand me over to a nursing home, I walked into court with a grocery bag, a kitchen timer, 3 pill bottles sorted by date, my pay stub from 31 years ago, a lemon, and an envelope I'd sealed with red thread. When the judge asked if I could manage my own life, I set the timer for 10 minutes, sliced the lemon into 8 even wedges without looking down, called out every medication by name, dose, and time, and recited my employee number from memory. My daughter's lawyer objected. The judge raised a brow. The red thread envelope would break the case clean in two, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm glad you're here. Follow my story to the end, because what looked like the end of my freedom was just the beginning of everyone learning exactly who I am. My name is Helena. I'm 65, and my hands smell faintly of solvent no matter how long I soak them. I spent my life at the Raven Plastics tooling plant, building housings that kept other people's machines safe while mine ate my lungs, my joints, my sleep. We worked under signs that said, "Safe today, proud tomorrow," the kind of slogan an accountant writes. My proud tomorrows were secondhand coats and the same 2 pots I'd had since the wedding. Pride doesn't fill a grocery bag. It was always loud at the factory. Presses thumped like unsteady heartbeats, compressors wheezed, and the air had that sweet metallic taste you carry home in your teeth. We had masks sometimes. Mostly we had rags and a foreman who said, "It's only 8 hours," as if breath itself punched a time clock. I raised 2 children between shifts. My son, Maxim, was born with those long, sensitive fingers that looked like they belonged to a pianist, not a boy who learned to sidestep puddles of cutting oil before he could ride a bike. My daughter, Raya, arrived 4 years later with a cry so fierce it startled a nurse into dropping a clipboard. After their father died unexpectedly quickly, a winter morning, coffee still steaming by the sink, I learned to balance grief and time sheets with the precision of a machinist's caliper. You learn to count quietly when you're poor. How many potatoes will last the week? How many kilometers to walk instead of taking the bus? How many nights to go without meat so the kids grow straight and tall? I asked for help exactly twice in my life. The second time was last spring, when my blood pressure pills doubled in price and the landlord's notice slid under my door like a blade. "Maxim," I said over the phone, "I'm late this month. Just this month." He was tired. You can hear it in a voice even over a cheerful ringtone. He'd taken extra work on a building site after his studio clients dried up. "Mom, I can't keep doing this. Lyra and the baby. I'm not asking forever," I said, and I meant it. Just this month. "I love you," he said, and I believe that love hurts him, because he's kind and life isn't. But I can't. I didn't ask a third time. The letter came in a white envelope with the factory's logo. It looked like a joke from a ghost. "Raven Plastics Tooling, we value your dedication." Inside, black type with 2 words that read like a trap: occupational compensation. The union, it said, had pushed through a settlement over hazardous exposure, solvents, benzene, all the whispers we used to trade over lunch like contraband. If I'd worked the eligible years and was diagnosed with certain conditions, I might be entitled to compensation. I have neuropathy that sings at night like wires in a storm. I have breath that runs out on the stairs. I have medical records stacked in a shoebox where other women keep silk scarves. I tucked the letter into my cardigan and walked to the clinic. Dr. Horvath listens well. It's his best medicine. He documented, tested, filled forms with that precise penmanship older men reserve for addresses and diagnoses. "You won't get back what they took," he said, "but this could help." Help. Imagine a word you avoided all your life becoming a door opening. The factory's lawyer was young enough to be my grandchild and wore shoes that didn't sound on tile. He carried a tablet and nodded at everything like he feared his head would fall off if he disagreed. "We're so sorry for your experience," he said, and I smiled, because sorry has a price, and I wanted to see their numbers. 2 months later, the bank called me into that small office where they offer you coffee to soften bad news. The manager clasped his hands and said a figure so large I thought he'd misread a phone number. It was more money than I had touched in my life, enough to fix a roof, a heart, a neighborhood. Enough to turn poor into careful. The bank held it for 3 days to verify the transfer. They offered a financial advisor. They offered a smile. They offered a long, narrow folder full of words like beneficiary and instrument and risk tolerance. I walked home steady and slow, the way you carry hot soup in a bowl that's too full. I told no one that first night. I boiled potatoes and onions and ate at the little table by the window like any other Wednesday. Raya found out by accident. The accident was her own, as many are. She borrowed my car for just an hour. Mama, I need to pick up forms at the district office. The forms were on her lap when she dropped the keys back on my counter. Guardianship paperwork, pages with words that cut even when you don't understand them fully. She had also borrowed my bank card to get gas. She had also, as it happened, seen the balance when she checked hers. She has always been very thorough when it comes to other people's things. She came back the next day with pastries and a kiss on my cheek that smelled like expensive perfume and the kind of plans you explain to children. Mama, I heard about the compensation. The plant did right by you finally. But money invites thieves. You lose things. You forget. I lose my patience, I said. I forget birthdays I'm not invited to. Her eyes went sharp. Raya's eyes tell the truth more often than her mouth. This isn't about feelings. It's about safety. You'll sign a voluntary guardianship. Just temporary. She flipped to a page with a small line and a large space for my name. It protects you and your funds. I found a lovely residential facility, activities, a garden, everything you like. They have a shuttle to the market. And visiting hours. I'll come on Thursdays. Visiting hours. They fit around a person like a collar. I have a garden, I said. Your garden is a bucket with geraniums, she said sweetly. Mama, be realistic. The doctor said your memory. The doctor said I should walk more and salt less, I interrupted. My memory is fine. Raya looked past me to the cupboard where I keep my cups in descending height order because it pleases me. This isn't about mind. It's about stress and risk. You never learn these things. It's a lot for someone older. Older. As if she wasn't counting my rib bones while she smiled. The next week, the bank called again. Mrs. Andrusick, we received a copy of a petition for guardianship filed by your daughter. As a precaution, the compensation funds are temporarily restricted until the court reviews. Raya moves quickly when money rolls downhill. She had alleged confusion, impaired executive function, missed appointments, unpaid bills. She attached an affidavit from a friend of hers who ran a placement agency. In my professional opinion, a structured environment would benefit the respondent. She scheduled a nurse from a facility called Silver Pines to conduct a friendly pre-admission evaluation at my apartment. Friendly like a net. I always believed that if you make your life small and neat, it will be left alone. I was wrong. But I've been wrong before and come back sharper. If someone sets the table for a feast you don't want to attend, bring your own utensils. I made a list on graph paper because straight lines are friends during a storm. Cognitive assessment with a geriatric psychiatrist. Not Dr. Horvath, someone Raya didn't know. Daily living documentation, meal prep, shopping, medication management, bill payment. Witnesses, neighbors, postmen, the librarian who knows exactly how often I come and what I ask for. A power of attorney, mine, not anyone else's, naming a neutral third party for emergencies only. A financial plan written in words I can understand and sign without swallowing salt. Evidence Raya would not want read aloud. I started with the mind, because when they want to take your life, they start by telling you cannot think. Dr. Karch, the geriatric psychiatrist, had soft hands and the kind of glasses that make people look kinder. He asked me to draw a clock. I gave him 11:57 with the 12 high enough to fit a sky between the numbers. He asked me words to remember. I carried banana, table, blue like they were sprouts in winter. He asked me to name animals. I gave him fox, elk, old mare in spring. He asked me to subtract 7 from 100. I've been removing small portions from big problems for decades. When he was done, he said, "You are very much here." I know, I said. But she plans to argue otherwise. He wrote a letter as if you were building a bridge, careful, anchored, with no room for collapse. Ms. Andrusic demonstrates intact executive function, independent medication management, and sound financial judgment consistent with her lifelong habits under constrained resources. She does not meet clinical criteria for any form of incapacitated status or the need for guardianship. Then I sat at my little table and did homework. I set my phone to record while I made cabbage rolls and borscht for the week. I labeled containers, dated them, stacked them with the neat pride of someone who has fed people on too little and liked it anyway. I filmed myself dispensing pills from blister packs into labeled boxes, morning, noon, evening, and then I recorded myself calling the clinic to refill a prescription that would run out on Wednesday. The clinic's system said, "Please state your name and date of birth," and I told a machine the story of my arrival in this world. I pulled bank statements like threads, rent paid on time for 27 months, utilities with no late fees, a small donation to the memorial fund for a friend whose heart stopped while waiting for a bus. I printed receipts for groceries. I wrote an affidavit about the time I told the pharmacist they gave me the wrong bottle because the imprint code didn't match. I asked my neighbor, Andre, to write how I helped him reset his router when the internet stopped talking to his television. He added, unasked, that I bring his mother soup on cold days and that I returned his wrench a year after borrowing it, saying I might need it again, but fairness matters. I walked 2 kilometers each morning and wrote the distance in a notebook because I am someone who likes small squares filled. I timed myself climbing stairs and wrote the numbers though no one asked for them. I wrote what I ate. I wrote how often I watered the geraniums. I wrote as if my life were a machine waiting to be inspected. This piece turns, and here are the rotations. For an attorney, I went to the legal aid office on Cooperativeness Street because humility buys better advice than pride. That's where I met Kim. She wore the same flat shoes I've worn for 20 years and carried a bag that looked like it had been to hell and back and found the exit. Kim read Raya's petition, read my notes, and looked up at me with the kind of study that calms seas. They file these when money arrives, she said. They dress it as love. Judges see the costume a dozen times a week. We'll undress it. You'll need to be theatrical, she added, and I laughed, because my theater has always been a stovetop and a factory line. Not dishonest, she said quickly. Just visible. We'll show the court who you are so they can't confuse you with a folder. What about the facility evaluation? I asked. She sent a nurse. Decline entry, Kim said. They have no right. If they insist, record everything. If she arrives with an appointment you didn't make, ask her to leave. If she doesn't, call me. The nurse arrived on Friday with a clipboard shield and a smile that assumed my gratitude. We just want to make sure you'll thrive in our community, she said, stepping over my threshold without waiting. I asked, lifting the phone. Do you and my daughter get a referral payment if I move in? Her smile flickered. We receive a standard placement fee, yes. Please leave, I said, and held the camera high enough to catch the way she set her jaw. And tell my daughter that her placement plans ended at my doormat. The red thread envelope began on a Monday when my neighbor's boy, Toma, came up the stairs with eyes too bright for a 10-year-old boy with a paint-splattered jacket. Your daughter was here, he said, but she didn't knock. She looked at your mailbox and took pictures. She also talked to Mr. Kravitz from the barbershop. He said she offered money if he told the court he often sees you wandering. Children tell the truth at inconvenient volumes. I bought Toma candy and then I did what factory women do best. I wrote dates, times, things said. I printed screenshots of text messages, Raya asking a friend at the clinic to write up something about memory. The friend replied, can't risk my license. But I know someone at Silver Pines. I recorded the voicemail Raya left me when I didn't answer. Mama, please sign before they freeze the funds. This is for your good. You're being paranoid. I loved her once with the simple devotion of a mother who counts bites on a plate to leave the bigger pieces for tiny teeth. That love didn't dissolve. It calcified into a bone I could set weight on. The red thread envelope swallowed my notes until it bulged. On hearing day, I wore my good coat and the boots I polish with the same care I give a casserole. The courtroom had the acoustics of a kitchen after a party. Everybody whispers, and you can hear everything that matters. Raya looked beautiful. She always does. Pale blue suit, pearls that photographed well, hair the color of summer straw. She sat beside a lawyer who had built a jaw to win arguments for him. Her eyes were damp even before the judge entered. She can cry on command. I saw it once when she needed Maxim to pay for a trip he didn't take. Kim set my grocery bag under the table like a talisman. "You ready?" she asked. "I've been ready for 40 years, I said. Raya's lawyer stood first. He spoke about safety, about concern, about how his client loved her mother and had watched a heartbreaking decline. He described late payments that never were, confusion that belonged to someone else's story, a missed appointment that happened because the clinic rescheduled and didn't call. He painted a portrait of a fragile woman everyone would want to help. He gestured to Raya at all the right moments, and she dabbed her eyes and nodded bravely, as if she were the one who had lost something. The judge turned to me. "Ms. Andrusik?" Kim touched my elbow. I stood and went where they pointed, the way you learn to move when lines and whistles run your life. "Tell me about your day-to-day," the judge said. I set the kitchen timer. "I wake at 6:40, I said. Tea on the stove while I check that my phone has charged. I walk 2 kilometers if the ground is not ice. I eat oatmeal with walnuts on Mondays, cornmeal porridge on Tuesdays, eggs on Wednesdays if the price is kind to me. I call my neighbor's mother on Fridays. She is 92 and forgets where she placed the remote. I remember for both of us. I water the geraniums on the 1st of the month even if they don't need it, because traditions matter to plants, too." The judge smiled despite herself. "Judges are also granddaughters." Kim put 3 pill bottles on the ledge. "Ms. Andrusik, can you identify your medications?" she asked. I didn't look down. Amlodipine 5 milligrams for blood pressure, mornings with food, metoprolol 25 extended release at night, gabapentin 100 as needed when the cold gets into my nerves. I gave the generic names and the brand names, in case anyone wanted both worlds. I called the clinic on Wednesday the 14th, because the metoprolol would finish on Friday the 23rd, and they sent the refill to the pharmacy on Herova Street, not the one on Drahomanova. So I walked there and bought apples around the corner, because I was already out. "Do you have proof of that call?" the judge asked. Kim held up my phone, open to a log so detailed a soldier would be proud. Time, duration, number. She had printed it, too. Paper makes everything louder. "Who helps you manage your finances?" the judge asked. "I do," I said, and handed up the spreadsheet where I'd written my little life in big numbers. Rent, utilities, groceries, gifts, savings. "I understand interest better than many men who sell it," I added, and maybe I shouldn't have, but sometimes a woman must present her teeth. The judge tapped the paper. "You give money away." "Only what I can spare," I said. "Poor taught me that generosity and foolishness are cousins who don't speak." Here are my proof of gifts. Receipts stapled to notes with the amount and why. A neighbor's bus fare to a job interview, 20 for the librarian's book drive. A used violin for a boy who watched my hands when I peeled potatoes as if rhythm were food. Raya's lawyer stood. "Ms. Andrusik," he said, voice silk over wire, "do you ever get lost? Do you ever forget the day?" "I forget to be angry sometimes," I said. "It's a comfort." He tightened his mouth. "Have you fallen in the last year?" "I fell in March on the ice behind the market." I stood up on my own and cursed only in my head. Laughter fluttered then died, because courtrooms are birds that don't trust their wings. He pushed on. "Your daughter reports you left a pot on the stove last month." I looked at Raya. "I burned onions in 94, 97, and 2011. I throw them out and start again. That's called cooking." Raya's lawyer held up a page. "An affidavit from a placement specialist says you are increasingly agitated, confused, and prone to outbursts." Kim rose before I could. "Your Honor, we object to reliance on a paid referral agent. We also have a recording." She nodded to me. I opened my phone and played a carefully clipped voicemail. Raya's voice filled the room. "If you can write something about memory for my mother, just enough to move this along, we'd both benefit. I can make it worth your time." Then the referral agent's response. "We receive placement fees for care, not diagnoses." The judge's eyebrows did that thing eyebrows do when someone left a door open in their house during winter. Kim handed the red thread envelope to the bailiff. Your Honor, she said softly, nothing like triumph, everything like respect. Inside is a timeline of the petitioner's communications regarding potential placement bonuses from 3 facilities. It also includes messages where Ms. Andrusic's daughter writes about using guardianship to resolve her own debts. We have redacted account numbers to keep the record clean. The judge cut the threads herself with a small silver letter opener, the sort of thing people keep to feel in charge of paper. She read. Silence swelled big enough to hold a life. I watched Raya watch the judge, and I saw the exact moment she understood that this performance wasn't going to end with applause. Ms. Andrusic, the judge said finally, looking at me, and then at the envelope, and then at my daughter. One last question. Why the lemon? I lifted the fruit from my grocery bag like an ordinary miracle. I used to cut lemons at the factory cafeteria for tea breaks, I said. I could slice 16 lemons in 2 minutes so they'd fit 100 mugs. It's a thing you never forget how to do, even if people try to convince you you've forgotten everything. I cut the lemon in 8 equal wedges without looking down. The juice stung the cuticle of my thumb, bright as a story told right. The timer dinged. I didn't jump. The judge leaned back. Petition denied, she said. Restrictions on Ms. Andrusic's accounts are lifted. Costs are assessed to the petitioner. Ms. Andrusic, I suggest you consider executing your own powers of attorney and a will with someone you trust. Ms. Rayana Andrusic, any further attempt to interfere with your mother's autonomy without legal basis will result in sanctions. Raya's mouth opened, then closed. She looked small for the first time since she learned how to use mascara. After, in the hallway that smells like old portraits and boiled coffee, Maxim stood with his hands in his pockets. He'd missed the beginning work, but he'd made the end, which matters more often than we admit. Mom, he said, and the word made something in my chest that had been holding its breath finally exhale. I'm sorry. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about the call I made that he couldn't answer. It was about every time he let silence do his talking. I know, I said. I am a woman who forgives on a schedule I keep to myself. Raya almost walked past us. Almost. She is not built to leave a stage without a last line. I was trying to help, she said, the way people do when they mean the opposite. Help is a bowl of soup, not a cage, I said, and she flinched as if honesty were an unexpected wind. I have debts, she said, like confession should purchase absolution. I had children, I said, and I fed them with 2 pots in my hands. We stared at each other across a lifetime. I didn't hate her. Hate eats the person who holds it. I set my bag on a bench and handed her the lemon wedges wrapped in my handkerchief. Here, I said. They'll keep your hands busy while you think. Kim touched my arm. Bank first, she said. Then papers. Then soup. We walked to the bank together. The manager shook my hand like a man who just discovered the notes in a song he's been humming for years. He lifted the restriction with a flourish. He offered me the advisor again. I shook my head. I'll bring my own, I said, looking at Kim. We went to a small office with a big window and drew up the documents judges like to see, a living will written in words I'd use in my own kitchen, a durable power of attorney naming Kim's firm for emergencies only, a will that split what I had left after I had the life I deserved. I added a line that made the corners of Kim's mouth twitch upward, no distribution to any party who, within 5 years of this document's date, petitions for my guardianship without a clinical basis. People will copy that, she said, pleased. Good, I said. Let them. I learned you can love a child and refuse them your future. I hired a financial planner who wore wool in winter and didn't try to sell me anything with a glossy brochure. We made a plan that looked like me, modest, cautious, full of little boxes to tick and small joys tucked between grocery lists. I fixed the roof of my building and wrote a letter with the amount I'd spent for the landlord to read when he decided what kind of person I am. I gave Andre enough to buy a new router and keep the old one in his closet for parts, because I understand men like him. I asked the librarian what the children's section needed. She said a rug and bean bags. I bought 4 and chose colors so bright even rainy days would blush. I went back to the factory one last time. They'd closed the old building and moved the presses to a place with better windows. The security guard recognized me anyway. Memory is kinder than rumor. I stood in front of the gate where I'd once clocked in at dawn with a sandwich wrapped in newspaper and watched the ghosts change shifts. I laid my palms on the chain link and said out loud, "They paid." Then I added, softer, but not enough, because truth deserves a second portion. A month after court, I started walking to the community center twice a week to talk to people with hair like mine about guardianship, about signatures, about the words they should know before someone who loves them for their money learns them first. We practiced the clock. We practiced slicing lemons. We practiced saying, "No, thank you. Please leave." We practiced calling legal aid before calling our children. People began to stop me at the market. "You're the lemon woman," they'd say, smiling like I'd done something better than bleed citrus on my cuffs. "My daughter tried to put me somewhere, too," whispered a woman with a scarf tied like my mother used to do. "I told her I prefer my own curtains." We laughed. Laughter is a weapon if you keep the blade clean. I didn't reconcile with Raya, and I didn't make a performance of not reconciling either. She called twice. I answered once. We spoke as if a fire had taken our house and left only a teapot and 2 cups intact. We sipped. We did not pretend to be warm. I reconciled with my son in the way you repair a chair, tighten what holds, replace what's cracked, and accept the creak as part of its music. Maxim came by on Sundays to fix small things that didn't require fixing and to let his daughter, my grandchild, paint my nails purple while we watched cooking shows and argued about salt. He brought Lyra once, later, and she stood in my kitchen like it haunted her and said, "I was wrong," in a voice that almost forgave itself. I put lemon slices in her tea, and she drank it without making a face. Progress. On the day my settlement cleared fully and the final paper came in the mail, the one with words that meant no one could tug the rug under me without calling the court first, I took the bus to the river. I sat on the bench and watched the water argue with stones older than anybody's name. I thought about all the women I'd known who learned to become very small so they could live undetected between danger and duty. I thought about how many of us found our way back to full size. When I got home, I took the red thread envelope from the cupboard and burned it in a pie tin on the stove. I opened the window. The smoke smelled like paper and lemon and the kind of future that doesn't need witnesses. I still keep my pills in labeled boxes and my receipts in neat stacks. I still walk my 2 kilometers in the morning when the ground is friendly. I still read the same cookbook I've read for 20 years and discover new ways to cook cabbage as if it were a secret animal. I still love my children, because love is a habit like breath. But I have learned that love, like money, makes a poor master and a very good servant when you set it to useful work. Sometimes, late, when the factory whistles in my ears have quieted and the apartment hums like a cat, I lie in bed and hold my palms up to the ceiling, the way you do when your hands ache, but you're proud of what they've made. I think about the judge's face when I slice that lemon. I think about the nurse's shoes at my doormat. I think about the day the factory said sorry and remembered that sorry can build a bridge if you lay the planks yourself. I'm 65 and I know the names of the things that keep me alive. My name is on my door and my accounts and the paper that says the only way I go anywhere is if I decide. I cooked dinner tonight for the librarian who picked the rug and for Audrey's mother whose stories are longer than television shows. They brought pastries. We laughed. The geraniums won't bloom again until spring, but they're green and stubborn in their bucket. That feels like a promise I once thought I had to earn. If you're listening because someone told you your life is too big for you now, get a timer, 3 pill bottles, a lemon, and a pen. Set the timer. Slice the lemon. Name your medicines. Write down your life in squares until the page shows you the map. Then go to court with your own envelope. And if your daughter says she was only trying to help, hug her if you can, forgive her if you want, refuse her if you must, and hand her a wedge of lemon to keep her hands busy while she learns what help actually looks like. Tomorrow I will wake at 6:40. I will look out the window at the river of cars and the old woman who walks her dog in a sweater she knitted herself. I will boil tea and peel potatoes and set onions into a pan with oil until they go sweet and gold. I will call a woman, maybe you, who left a message at the center saying her son used the word guardianship like a lock. We will talk about keys. We will practice slicing lemons through phone lines. We will make judges into granddaughters again. They tried to write my ending. I rewrote the middle. That's how you win when people forget you built their machines and their mornings. You show them your hands, and you keep them.
So another story of my grandmother has end, and be clicking here you will have when more such stories.